I am a real fan of photography and was ecstatic to be introduced to Catherine Chalmers' work by a friend of mine. She showed me one of her books, Food Chain, that shocked me. I'd never seen creatures portrayed this way, just these amazingly stark, colorful shots of these predators and prey, from plant to insect to amphibian, so striking. From those who know her work and the critics who praise and criticize it, there is no doubt that what Catherine is creating is important and that in a very serious way, she is reinventing natural history for a culture, increasingly distancing itself from nature. So I really wanted to meet her and was very lucky to be able to take a little look through in her studio.
Hi, I'm Catherine.
Hi, Rosario.
Nice to meet you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming by.
Thanks for having me in your home.
This is a panther chameleon from Madagascar.
Does he have a name?
Mr. Chameleon. That's where he hangs out during the day on his tree.
I love that. I want to do that. How are you?
To eat, he shoots his tongue out, and his tongue is about a body length and a half. So he could almost take a cricket off of your head. Maybe about down here his tongue could reach.
Wow.
So it's pretty...
Sexy.
Yeah, it's...
This is great. Oh, I love that.
This is my bug wallpaper that I did at one point when I was, I don't know, feeling ambitious and had some Chalmers glue.
Oh my goodness, I love it. I'm totally stealing this idea. It'd be nice to like put them with shells and like other types of things to like just create whole little. Yeah. It's all the kind of stuff that you know. I love like watching and seeing all of these little worlds you've created. And it's like this kind of stuff we used to do in school, and you'd have to do it in like a little shoebox or whatever, and we created. And it was always like, gosh, do we have to? And then you'd get so into it and super creative, and it's something I haven't done in a long time. And I'm looking around, I'm so inspired to like just do this in my house. It's so cool. People don't even think about this different subject matter, let alone explore it in the depth that you have. How does that change how you look at the world?
I can't imagine now living without a broader ecosystem than just myself in a box, or even myself and other people in a box. That there's something more besides the human, and I think doing this work has brought that out. Dealing with the issues that I do in terms of where the human world and the animal world commingle, there's nothing keeping it in this medium. There's nothing keeping it in painting. There's nothing keeping it in photography, video, drawings, anything. It can go anywhere. It just depends on the stories and the ideas and the thoughts that you have that could take it into a medium. Having these mediums at your disposal, it feels like having a full symphony. Most of our evolutionary history, our opinions of animals hasn't really mattered. I mean, we eat certain ones and we don't other ones. But now, because the ecosystem is, you know, in danger of crashing and we're losing biodiversity, our opinions of these animals, you know, based on these things of something like aesthetics or an animal being able to transform its color, which we think is interesting, is, you know, determining, you know, what's left out there and what's not. And so these vague kind of aesthetic notions that we have about, oh, I like a frog, oh, I don't like a snake, has nothing to do really with what it takes for the ecosystem to be healthy. When I was creating the environment, it was according to how this gecko would feel comfortable and then how the camera would see. If the plants were low, then he'd feel exposed and he would make a beeline to the perimeter and you would never see him. He's sweet, isn't he?
Right now, totally.
And he licks his eyeballs.
Very, very cool. See, these are the wonderful things you can find out when you spend some more time with these guys. That's very cool. It must take a lot of time to do all of this after especially getting to know them and know what they probably really care about.
Because I raise animals that I work with, really more time goes into raising them than goes into the photography or the video. For me, that's how you learn about them, and that's how, in doing photography or video, you know how to bring out what they can do or what they do is by actually living around them and taking care of them. You know, humans as a species tend to be very involved with themselves as a species, and I think that's fine, but I think we're running the risk of not having anything else left. I think the diversity of wildlife out there is very important.
And it's kind of fascinating and wonderful, and that joy that you can have as a child looking at these beautiful things, but you kind of tend to lose that a little bit as you get into an adult. And I think that's one of the things where I love about acting, actually, is because I get to choose and be different people all the time. So I change my perspective a lot, which I don't think most people ever do.
It was hard to as well, but it's also, you know, the fear of losing what you think you are or something.
I think that's super important to kind of step back and realize how much you don't know and embrace that, which I don't think people are very comfortable doing.
I mean, a scientist can tell you so much about this gecko that I don't know, and I do read about them, but I'm trying to bring out another part of them, which is to have us, care about them, but more from a cultural sense as opposed to a scientific sense.
That's been done so many times over through entertainment, actually, by having Charlotte's Web made people like spiders, which you never could have done before, or pigs and pork, exactly. Like, it's so fascinating how you can do that if you give them a personality, that anthropomorphizing your creature and giving it those human qualities. But how do you get close enough to actually see the details of all of that?
Well, I use a lipstick camera, which is an attachment that goes into my camera to record, and so I'm actually down on their level, and it's much less intrusive than a big camera in front of their face.
So you're getting video and then you do stills from that?
I don't tend to do videos and stills in the same set, and so it's sort of one thing or another because the lights are so different and the setup's different. Yum. He loves those things.
That was quick. You were a painter first, and then you got into photography. How long have you been doing photography?
The first project I did was '92 with houseflies. But of course, taking a picture of a housefly is, like going into brain surgery for photography. They're small, they move fast, and it's indoors. And I knew nothing. I didn't know what an aperture was. I didn't know f-stop, anything. So there's a big learning curve for that. Video actually doesn't seem that related to photography to me. I mean, they get clumped together, but the minds to make them are so different.
That's interesting. And then you can also do the comparison between the painting and then the still that you would also have as well, because it has that one type of perspective that you can manipulate and play with, but when there's a whole different depth of field when you're actually doing video and you're seeing how they're moving and playing around, that you
and
can
over time
manipulate in a different way.
And sound and, it was totally different. But I still do still photography, and it's all, handheld, and I follow the animal around, and I use strobes, so if they're moving and I'm moving, it's not a problem. Let's see, okay, so the macro lens is all the way extended. Okay, right now I'm seeing the veins in his eyeball.
Wow.
Right there. And it's so much easier in some senses because you have the strobes to stop. So if things are moving, you can still get it in focus. Where in video, especially with the handheld, I've got to move my hand in order to follow them because the focus is at the end of the lens.
Right.
And I can't get to it when it's right by the animal. Hi there. Ooh. But it's nice with the macro lens because you get to go in and see things that you can't really see with your naked eye. And when I started photographing the houseflies, houseflies in terms of flies are smaller than the big outdoor ones. And all of a sudden I saw these balance sacs on the side, and I didn't know what they were. And I talked to an entomologist, what's this and what's this, and you saw behaviors and things that you wouldn't see normally if you didn't have a lens to view it through.
There you go.
There he goes back into his house. His eyes are beautiful. I never noticed his eyes until I actually looked through the lens. They're so beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, these are the houseflies I was telling you about that Larry chose to show in the new museum, Larry Clark. The sex, that's a female after sex. After she's had about 5 suitors in a row, she takes her arms and her legs and her wings, and she kind of goes like this.
Nice.
She
She's
flies off.
Ooh, when you get to mama.
After months of photographing flies, only the females did it, and only after they had sex.
That's crazy.
I know.
That's cool. Why Aperture?
Even though I was in the painting world before that, and I wasn't really in the art world, I had heard of Aperture. I'd seen their magazine, and the person who was behind the book was an editor there. That's why we did it there. And then that experience was a good experience. He was the editor of one of my husband's books. And the designer on both of my books also designed one of his books. So it's kind of this family thing because he had his first book done at Aperture before I even met him. So it was this kind of interesting swapping of editors and art designers and publishers, and we were in the same magazine together and we didn't even know each other. I almost could have met him that way even though I didn't. So it was kind of fun. Yeah.
I love those things.
Yeah.
So this is actually your second book, right? This is The American Cockroach.
Was the actual name of the animal too. It's Paraplaneta americana. And Linnaeus named it and misnamed it because it doesn't come from America. It comes from Africa. Their residence is where they go through their biology in the house, drinking, eating. Here's where they're molting. Took forever because I had to wait for them to molt. But they hang upside down and their shell splits open, and then they plunge out as a really white, sort of very angelic looking insect.
Yeah, that was actually quite surprising when I was going through seeing that. Like, I would never have thought of them.
You don't see them, yeah, very often because they don't do it out in front of you because it's a very vulnerable time for them. Sex on the bed. And once they join up, they stay like that for about 45 minutes. And the female is bigger, and she just pulls the male around and goes where she wants, lugging this thing behind her. And then being born, little tiny egg case.
Yeah, so when they're born and when they're molting, they have that whitish
They're
sheen.
white, yeah, translucent.
How long does it take before that changes?
Hours. Like,
Just a couple hours?
Like 7 hours, maybe.
So they're really squishy at this point. So
They're very
super-
squishy.
They're like glass noodles.
Yeah, if you so venture to eat them. They are edible. Here's my Andy Warhol pot flowers. Pot beetles. Birds of paradise.
Yeah, this really was so striking in the feathers, especially because there are cockroaches that fly.
There
which
are, yeah.
Hideously scary.
And in
like,
fact,
awful.
these fly. The males can fly, and the first one that flew off my set was a revelation and made me nervous from that point on forward. I couldn't believe it flew off my set. I was just dumbfounded. And of course, dealing with cockroaches, you know, I certainly had to go through the whole execution or the idea of killing. So I decided instead of killing them how we kill them, which is usually essentially by creating a gas chamber and throwing gas behind the walls and killing them that way, to kill them in the way that we have devised to kill each other. That was one of the things that I wanted to play with, is see if it was possible to actually elicit a sympathetic response from people about an animal that they hate and would have no problem calling it an exterminator if they had some. And so, you know, why is that difference? I mean, why do we not care if we exterminate, 200 by the walls? And why do people say kill the artist if they think she's killing one? You know,
Exactly.
But you can see it up close and see its face, and, all of a sudden people change their tune about it, but yet they're still called the exterminator.
Well, I mean, that's across the board. Anyway, Marilyn Manson has a song where he says, death of one is a tragedy, the death of millions, just a statistic. Right. And it's kind of fascinating how we do that when we lose that, because we think of ourselves as individuals, and so we have a way of sympathizing with that. This creature burning on the stake makes me think of witches and individuals and masses against an individual, which is very different than being an individual trying to kill that mass of bugs.
Right.
It's weird.
Which is why I wanted to focus on, a bug. But I didn't want to get into the killing of a specific bug, so all of these animals were from my pickled collection.
In order to photograph and film these cockroaches for American Cockroach, Catherine's second book, she needed to control the environment and the lighting to create the perfect picture. So she designed these incredibly detailed sets to replicate stuff that we would normally have in our own home. A living room, a bedroom, a baby nursery, a bathroom. It's very impressive, the detail and the thought that she put into these rooms, just as much as set designers do in the movies that I work on. The most profound part of this process is seeing these cockroaches in a very human environment.
So for the photographs, I was interested in showing their biology, the parts of their life that we don't see, which is sex, molting, being born, drinking and eating. We normally just see them running away from us. I kind of went to town on the bedroom. When I filled it with roaches, I had all these females and males that had just molted into adults, so they became sexually active, and I thought I'd put them all together, and I would have this orgy. I had 15 females and 15 males. That scene, which I thought would be over in a flash, nothing happened, and it became a waiting game. The bathroom is where I was interested in showing them drinking in the bathtub. The common name for the American cockroach is water bug, so you would think water. But they weren't that interested in drinking, so what I did, one of their favorite foods is bananas. So I mixed water with bananas and sugar, and then I got them all going towards it. So I was interested in sort of investigating that whole idea of transformation, which art in many respects is about the transformation of life. So I made an art collector's living room and repainted paintings that I felt had some visual relationship with what they were doing. In the case here, the Bryce Marden painting, which is sort of their scurrying pattern. The Motherwell is the repeating almond shapes of their body form. Cy Twombly is from his Laplanto painting. For him, those were ships. For me, they look like roaches, something falling down from the roach shape. The Judd stack is that translucent amber, which they are. The Rothko was about the transformation of the darker color to the lighter color. And the Ellsworth Kelly carpet, just the square shape to the round shape, playing on the idea of transforming from one shape to another. This is Crawl Space. It's the fourth video that I shot. And this had a lot of difficulties in the editing process because the music is Shostakovich. I found the music, and that led me to the idea of shooting this video. So it was very difficult to edit it backwards, in a sense, have the sound, which then you have to edit the footage too. The magic is that the animals seem to be moving and dancing to the music, which was, considering it's Shostakovich, I thought it was quite remarkable. Actually, in trying to get a roach to go from a dark space out into a light space is very difficult. So it looks like they're, you know, walking out to check it out on their own accord, but it's lit, and so they did not want to come out. It was actually very difficult to get them out of the whole pipe that was underneath there. But here he's sort of, his antenna sort of become like the conductor's baton. And throughout the video, you know, sometimes it seems like the antenna or the bow of the cello, sometimes they feel like the string of the cello, and here they sort of seem like the conductor. But this piece, this cello concerto, number 1 by Shostakovich, has a very guttural, sort of very ancient sound to it, and which is why I liked it for this. This is the birthday cake. And it really kind of got in the cake and got covered, and its antennas were looped around, and it was eating all the frosting and eating the frosting off itself, and it was pretty amusing. It couldn't get the frosting off of its back. But it, you know, they can crawl up pretty much anything, as you can see. You know, I like the fact that people see the humor in it, because the work certainly has humor in it.
How long have you been married?
7 years.
7 years.
Yeah.
Your husband, Charlie, he does photography as well, but you guys don't, you both live here, but he has another studio someplace else? Like, how does that work? You both work at home and...
Well, we have the place in the city and the place in the country. He spends more time in the country in the studio there. I spend more time in the studio here. So when I go up there, it's actually a break. When he comes down here, it's a break. So it's nice. We're kind of always on vacation when we see each other. He lived in the rainforest off and on for 8 years in Indonesia and faced much more unusual creatures than what I'm raising. So he's okay with it all. But he doesn't like the roaches, and he's really happy that that project is done.
Oh, really?
But with the roaches, I'm worried about me, because I don't want to live around them, and I'm worried about my neighbors who would hate me. And they're my chameleon's favorite food, the roaches. He ate the rest of the project. And with the roaches, actually, I'm more afraid of them now than when I started. And so instead of, you know, like a doctor who becomes used to the blood and guts, I've become more sensitized. So any little bit of brown fluff that's scurrying across the floor, any place, oh, it's a roach, oh, it's a roach. It's like I see them everywhere. And also, because they don't like to be around us, it's like, you know, being a dentist whose patients are always wanting to flee the chair. You know, it's this weird feeling that you get. You're working with something that doesn't want to work with you. And when I started working on the new film, it was 20 different species, reptiles, amphibians, all these lovely animals. It's like my spirit rose again, because I was actually around on a daily basis animals that I felt better about.
Has it affected your dreams? Has it totally affected how you've like behaved in the world and how other people have treated you?
When I first ordered my first, you know, carton of cockroaches from a biological supply company, I, for a week, had nightmares. Roaches getting out, escaping everywhere. I've had horrible, horrible, you know, B-grade movie roach dreams. Many of them, too many of them. But working with the insects and working with the animals, and especially doing this video where I'm working with plants and animals at the same time to sort of bring out the two of them in the environment, it's sort of led me to some ideas about painting in terms of the patterns and forms and colors that animals and plants have, but more in an abstracted sense, and it's sort of a sense of them coming together. So, you know, each project kind of informs, you know, possibilities of the future. There are some ideas that will be relevant to painting, which is, you know, made up. It's an illusion. It's complete fiction. It's, you know, it's just paint on canvas. But the other thing is I'd like to make a film, like for a theater-going audience, movie audience, as opposed to the art world, which is already kind of a subset of people.
You mentioned earlier that you'd worked with Larry Clark before. He helped you do your first show, is that what you said?
Yeah, well, it was interesting when I Googled you, and I saw that your first film was kids. Just when I first started doing photography, when I started with the Houseflies, he was one of the many artists who was asked to curate essentially a show, and it was called Who Chooses Who. So each artist, a well-known artist, was asked to choose an artist that they would want in the show. And he chose me. And it was a huge honor because I had never really been in a show. I was just out of school, and I just started doing photography, and it was at the New Museum, and it was really, I mean, for me, it's just like such a thrill. So when I saw that, you started with Larry Clark, so did I.
I hear you like to ice skate.
Oh, yeah?
So you go ice skating every day?
I skate every day.
Really?
Yeah,
So
I'm a junkie.
Are you planning on doing anything, like any insects or creatures on ice?
No, leave that to Disney. I don't think so.
I know when they get a little cold, they stop moving, which is,
Stop moving, and the ice is cold enough that would actually kill them. When I moved to New York, I was looking for some more interesting way to get exercise than jogging or swimming. So I picked up my old skates from when I was 14 and put them on. They still held together. And I started skating, and the thing is, you kind of do it or you don't, and especially if you're doing jumps and spins and stuff like that, you kill yourself if you don't do it on a regular basis. I mean, I go every day, Monday through Friday, and I get out and I go in the morning, and it gets me out of the studio, and then I can come home and my head's clear and start to work.
Something completely different.
There's the whole artistry part, and there's the music, and there's the dance, and there's the choreography. And so it's more artistic than some sports. And when I made the Squish video of the sort of ballet of running bugs, I choreographed it really quickly because I'd been so used to doing choreography on ice. And essentially, it's, bodies in motion, with the timing, with music, with the beat. And so when we made the music for it, it all kind of like fell in naturally as if I had done this before, which of course I'd never done it on film or with insects, but I had done it so much myself that I had a real sense of like rhythm and flow and action and where it needed to go.
Each person has their type of meditation. Albert Einstein played violin, like there's always something to do that seems completely opposite that actually ends up helping you to get back into your work, all that deeper.
Yeah.
I just think what's so fascinating was also the colors and the vividness and the way that, because you have this very rich personal life, you're able to bring that to your subject matter, which is so great, the vivid colors and, the shininess of the insects, and there's such a warmth to it that I think that's what's so great about it, is that I end up thinking about them not just clinically, not just like some scientific journal or something like that, but I end up bringing something so much more to it and actually questioning what my relationship is to it. Even when you were first, or like you were painting, you were looking at the flies, and then you started photographing them, you realized that you'd not paid attention to their eating and dying cycle. Like that was all kind of happening below, and you'd kind of ignored that. And then it was like by surprise, like, oh, let me look at that, and that led to food chain, which is amazing. But it's fascinating, like those are the two basic things that pretty much any living and breathing thing has on this planet, and we can forget that so often because we can be so subjective in our way that we look at the world.
And that there are other viewpoints besides our own. And that was one thing before when we were looking at the snake, is the snake has its view of it, the mouse has its view, and we have the third view. And whose are you going to go by, really? I mean, whose side are you going to take? And why should your sentimentality or sympathies influence whether the mouse survives or whether the snake survives? And that doesn't have to be such a critical issue, except for today, when so many things are going extinct, it becomes an issue that if we of this generation don't face it, in 200 years, there'll be pests, pets, and farm animals that we eat, and then that's it. There will be no tiger, panda, and all these amazing animals, along with a whole bunch of other smaller things. But I think as an artist, it kind of motivates me to keep exploring and keep going and find where our human world and the animal world actually commingle and do some really lovely or wonderful things. This is the International Center of Photography, where they're showing my video Safari as part of their Ecotopia exhibition.
Clearly, how your work's been affecting you over the years has also been affecting other people that have taken notice. You're still very new to the game in a lot of ways, but you've had a lot of success because there's something that you're expressing so clearly. Why do you think they've responded so strongly to your work, and What do you hope maybe actually they get from that?
I think probably the same thing that the work has brought to me, which is this desire to be around a larger ecosystem to where you're surrounded by more than humans, that those things matter. Because I think if they don't matter to us, then they won't continue to be there. The awareness of people's reactions, oftentimes in the form of complaints, has keyed me into how important it is that people sort of understand that although we may cut our food with a knife and fork and pretend that it wasn't, moving on four hoofs or something before, the rest of the ecosystem doesn't work that way, and if the planet is going to function, we have to have some general knowledge of the fact that it works differently outside our walls than it does on the inside, and that we have civilized ourselves, in a sense, away from these things, but that doesn't mean they don't exist.
When I began this journey to meet Catherine, I wasn't sure what to expect, but after reading her Aperture books, I had a lot of questions about her work and what it was that she was trying to convey. Now that I've spent some time with the animals that she so well nurtures and raises for her photography and video, I've had a chance to really see what it is that she's trying to show us. Her photography doesn't just show a cockroach or a praying mantis. It looks deeply into their lives, their world. She's taken on, like an actor, these various personas and looked into these animals' lives through a different lens. To be able to understand someone else's world can be a little scary and a very humbling process. I do it with acting and the various roles I take on, and Catherine does it through the use of photography and video. This has really been wonderful. It's been making me think in totally different ways. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for spending the time. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you and hear about you and what you're doing. And
passionate storyteller.
Hope to see you again.
I hope so too.
Thank you.
Let me know when we're doing those films. Okay. I could do a voiceover or something. I'm good at that.
But there's actually acting parts.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
there's people. There's going to be
people.
humans.
Yeah.
What have you always wanted to do and you haven't had a chance to do yet? And I just blurted out, I want to build a wooden boat.